Welcome to this episode of the Studio Sherpas podcast, where my number one goal is to help you grow your video business. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ryan Coral, and I have owned a video production business and have a team and a studio and all that stuff. And I've got an itchy nose. My aim with this show, I've been doing this work for 15 years. My aim with this show is to invite you into a greater community of filmmakers, inspire you to charge what you are worth, and ultimately create a business that doesn't just survive, but thrives. This episode is jam-packed with all sorts of stuff. I'm super glad that you're here. Let's get into it. I cut my teeth 15 years ago filming weddings. At our peak, we were filming upwards of 40 plus weddings a year. I filmed all sorts of celebrities, NFL heroes, politicians, all over the planet, and I loved it. Absolutely loved the work that I got to do. Got to film just in these crazy, amazing places that I wouldn't normally have gotten invited to, but it was cool filming weddings, getting invited to these places and getting paid. And I got to eat really good meals too. I probably gained so much weight when we were shooting 40 weddings a year. But it was so good for my growing up in this world of video production that it taught me how to be efficient, how to work inside, outside, with terrible lighting, with good lighting, how to work in the rain, how to travel on plane. Well, I guess I knew how to travel on planes, but how to travel with tons of gear on planes, how to pack gear with intention, how to plan for the unexpected, and how to do good work with little or no plan. Filming weddings is really where I grew up in the industry of filmmaking and storytelling, and I'm so incredibly thankful for that. So I know the huge value that today's episode is going to bring to so many, especially if you don't even know these guys. If you're a wedding filmmaker, you probably do, but even if you're not, and you're a person that just says, like, I would never shoot a wedding or never shoot another wedding, Nick Miller and John Bunn bring a ton of value to the general filmmaking community, but obviously more specifically to the wedding filmmaking community. Whichever boat you're in, whichever ship you're in, whatever pillar you focus on, whatever your niche is, it's going to be good. We talk about, here are the things that we talk about. You ready? How to work with your competition and grow like crazy at the same time. We also talk about how the face of a brand is more important than you give it credit, and also how self-confidence is your best friend or your worst enemy, and how to harness it. We also talk about the secret to a solid sales pitch and how a sales script is garbage unless you're doing this one thing, and finally how to serve your clients instead of selling to them. So much stuff, but seriously, really good. And make sure to stick around to the end. There is a special live workshop that John and Nick are hosting that we want to invite you to. And if you just can't wait, you can get free access for the next few days if you go to howtofilmweddings.com/Studio Sherpas. That website, once again, is howtofilmweddings.com/Studio Sherpas. And now, did I ever tell you my and now story? I got to share that sometime. It's hilarious. You're going to love it. So just remind me to do that. And now, my interview with Nick and John. What's up, guys? Hey, welcome to the Studio Sherpas podcast. I can say that so fast. It's like Studio Sherpas podcast. My name is Ryan Coral. I'm your host. And with me today is John Bunn and Nick Miller. Actually, I should have asked you guys, what order do you like me to say your name?
John Bunn goes first every time.
Yeah. Every time. Okay.
Man, he just got in there faster. I usually do it like an alphabetical thing just to make John's ego feel
there you
better.
Go.
But that's why his name is first, alphabetical.
Yeah, good. So these guys are from How to Film Weddings. If you film weddings, you need to know these guys. So you're welcome for me introducing them to you. But chances are you probably do know them because they've got a podcast. They've got an awesome Facebook group that has tons and tons of people, and they drop all sorts of knowledge and all sorts of goodies and things. So paint a picture here. When you run into people and you say what you do, you guys really aren't together, proximity physically wise, like you're in different states.
Yes.
So I run into you on the street. We're talking like, hey, tell me, what do you do? How do you explain to people what it is that you do?
Well, first and foremost, I consider myself, a wedding videographer. Like that's what I'll say when people say, "What do I do?" And it's not until we kind of dig deeper into the conversation that I kind of bring up, "Oh, I have a podcast." My wife is really funny. Like on wedding days when we're shooting and we're, meeting other people, normally I like to talk about myself and that kind of thing, but for whatever reason, I don't want to gloat on a wedding day. And so she is the one that actually brings, "Oh, you should check out this podcast that my husband runs." But I do introduce myself as a wedding videographer first. I like to shift that to podcast host maybe eventually down the line. But, yeah, that's what I say. John?
Yeah, I mean, so, both of us are wedding videographers first. I've run a business for 13 years. Nick, I think 8 years at this point. We're 7, almost 8. And so like we're running these businesses that have become successful 6-figure businesses. And yeah, I mean, we kind of hooked up about 2 years ago. I had Nick shoot a wedding with me. We started talking numbers and he was like, "Oh my goodness, you're charging what?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, your films look like this. This is like, can you help me with how you're doing that?" And he was like, "Can you help me with my business?" And, I was like, "If I was shooting the way you're shooting, I'd be charging way more than I'm charging." And he was like, "What?" And, so we just kind of built this friendship. And so like, I don't know, it was one of those deals to me where, a God moment, if you will, where, our paths crossed. And so now when I'm introducing myself, it's like, yes, I own Redeemed Productions, a video company out of Tulsa, but more and more it's moving towards education and helping people run their business, shoot weddings. And then about a year ago, year and a half now, about a year ago, we launched the How to Film Weddings brand and podcast. And now we're 70 episodes in, hundreds of countries, and just living the good life. So, I mean, I don't know how to explain how we would do what we do, but that's kind of, we're both running our separate businesses, but at the same time, more and more of our time is now being filtered into this educational brand, this content, Facebook group, free workshops, all kinds of content. We just kind of want to be a hub for wedding filmmakers to have community. And, just, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I guess that would be all I have to say about that.
Nick,
that's our origin story.
Yeah,
that's our origin story.
I like it. What was the light bulb moment? Like, take me to that time or that place where you guys said, "Hey, what if we did this thing?"
Okay, so in the fall of 2017, I went to the Venture Workshop. It's a wedding videography workshop hosted by White and Reverie and some other people. And one of the things that I took away from that workshop was I should be creating a YouTube channel and like putting out, educational type content, like that sort of stuff. And so whenever I came back from that, I made a YouTube video about how to remove the warp stabilizer wobble, when you add that to an effect and everything on your screen's kind of going, crazy. And I figured out in After Effects how to remove that kind of. And John had wanted to get into the education space for a while, but he was like, "It just doesn't look how I want it to look." And I made that video. I posted in a wedding video group, and John was like, "That's how I want my stuff to look." And then I think that's why he actually had me come shoot this wedding with him, was because he wanted to get to know me. I mean, he was like, "Dude, your stuff is awesome," buttering me up and all that. But he wanted us to figure out, how can we do this? Maybe how can we do that kind of stuff together?
Yeah, and if I can jump in there. So like I had recorded a lot of content like 5-6 years ago. Like I wanted to get into teaching people. People had been messaging me, "How are you doing this? We're charging upwards of, 10,000 and more for wedding films and in Oklahoma." And so people are like, "What are you doing? I'm seeing your films. They're great, but they're not like blowing me away. How are you running your business and doing?" And so like, I'd been trying to make all this content and it didn't feel right. I'm very self-aware and I'm like, it doesn't have like that X factor to it. And so we recorded a bunch of stuff and had it on the shelf. And I was just kind of involved in the videographers groups and saw Nick's video and was just like, "That's it. That's what I'm looking for. That's the look I want and the feel I want." And so I did reach out. I was shooting a wedding and just like, "Man, you should come shoot with me." Just wanted to get to know him to see if he was a cool dude. And it turned out that like he has a wife and 2 kids. I have a wife and 2 kids. We were both worked at churches before we started doing wedding films, very similar. He's in Wichita, Kansas. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's like a 3-hour drive. So I had that wedding in Oklahoma City, which was kind of halfway between both of us. And it just kind of stars kind of aligned, and we just had a really good time on that first shoot. And, you know, I liked working with him, and we started just, you know, that's where the aha moment kind of came for me, was just like, oh my goodness, this dude's actually pretty cool. Cause it was kind of like a first date, you know? So.
Yeah. Funny story with that. John was like very explicit, and he was like, bring your gimbal. I don't have one. Bring your gimbal. And he sent me some text, and I read it wrong, and I thought it said leave your gimbal, or I don't need it, or something like that. So literally,
it did not say that.
No, I read it that way. Okay, that isn't what he said. And so I drive the 2.5 hours to meet him, and he was like, dude, where's your gimbal? And I was like, oh, I thought you said you didn't need it. And
strike one, buddy. Strike one.
Joke's on him. He got stuck with me. So
I love that idea. I think that you guys were really onto something early on where, John, you said, hey, I think if I hired Nick, I really like his stuff. I'd like to. That is just super smart and strategic. I don't think a lot of people think like that, to think like, hey, I'm going to hire somebody who, you know, really is your competition, right? He's 2.5 hours, 3 hours away. You guys are pulling from the same kinds of clients. So to hire somebody to really be able to shadow, to learn from, I just don't think people think like that most of the time. They think like, oh no, this guy's my competition. But I would love for people to start thinking more like that, right?
Yeah, John is actually really, really good about that. In you know, he always talks about, you know, the Gary V thing of like trying not to score on the first date, you know, of, you know, like talking to people and getting to know people and building a relationship, and like, how can I help you, or how can maybe we help each other so that you can maybe eventually, you know, build this relationship so we can, you know, continue to grow that. So I think that is a great thing that he is always thinking of and stuff. I remember whenever we first started this podcast, and I would just like message people that I wanted on. I'm like, hey, I have this podcast. You want to be on? And I'd send that message to John, and he was like, dude, no, like you can't do that. You know, you need to like talk to them and get to know them a little bit. So that's one thing that I've definitely learned from him. And him and I are both, you know, big in, you know, sharing the stuff that we've got. I mean, it's like there's enough weddings, there's enough business, there's enough stuff out there where we don't have to like be super cutthroat, and we can share the stuff that we have and help each other and all of that stuff. And that's like kind of a core thing why we're doing this, you know, like we have knowledge and we want to share it, and we're just giving it out. So yeah.
That's awesome. When you were really Nick, when you were at the venture workshop and you came away from that feeling like you wanted to create some content for YouTube, what was that like? More like you just had this desire to say like, I want to create content for wedding filmmakers to help them in their business, or was it like something that was going to help your wedding brand?
I think it. Okay, so my backstory is I was a youth pastor for 11 years, and I left that job in the summer of 2017. And I think there was I talked to, we actually still go to that same church, and I'm still really good friends with the preacher there and stuff. He's like, do you miss it? And I'm like, no, I actually don't. But one thing that I do miss is the teaching part, being up and just speaking and that sort of thing. And so I think I got this fire under me from that. One of the things was I am good at that. And I've been schooled at education and that kind of thing. So I wanted to jump in and do that some more. So I think that it was somewhat selfish. Well, maybe not selfish is the right word, but I wanted to fill that hole within me of doing some kind of education and some kind of teaching. And so I don't know what the purpose was, if I wanted to be like a name in the wedding video community, or if I just wanted to help. I don't know, but I knew that I wanted to teach and educate. And so that's why I jumped in that way.
I love that. That's really good. Yes, I resonate with that. Which is one of the reasons why we're all like, yeah.
We're all,
just totally maybe related, not, John, what did you, when you worked at a church, what did you do?
So fun story. I had two jobs. First of all, I was in the
when you work at a church, you have like, maybe one job, but it's actually like 30 jobs or hats.
Yes, that is how it worked. It was a pretty big church here in town, 5,000-6,000 people. So it wasn't a small church, but I was the youth media director, which means I made everything from like 0 to 18-year-old departments, their video announcements, their flyers, their banners, their logos, everything. So, around 1,500 kids worth of like stuff. So I'm printing huge banners all the time. I'm designing, I'm learning Photoshop on the fly. I went to school for advertising and marketing, but loved video stuff. And then the other side of it was I was one of the kids pastors, and I had a class. And as I was a kid, I just knew how to grow things. I don't know, that was what I loved doing, is taking something and turning it from 2 into 4 or 4 into 20. And so like they gave me the 4-year-olds classroom, the kids church, and I had about 40 kids, and in about 2 years I had about 250 kids. And like I figured out a character for myself. I became Super John. I wore a green suit with a cape that was yellow and yellow rubber gloves, and slicked my hair back and came in and told people that they had power. And so like had the store with superstars where they came to church, they got bucks and they could spend them in the store, and just like strategically figured out how to like get more people there. And so like I was running the video department as well as teaching a couple hundred 4-year-olds in a spandex outfit. And no, you can't find photos of that.
Yeah, that's
maybe you can, but yeah. And that was, I 2006. So, I mean, it's been a minute.
Yeah. So we did get Matthew Pye sent us a message, and we had just asked our peeps what we should ask you guys. And his comments was that he just wanted to hear all the deep nuggets about sticky buns. So I thought that might be a good segue.
Obviously, that makes total sense to the listeners.
Yeah. All your people like, what? Who are these guys? Like, so we have
sticky buns.
Yeah, we have a couple of phrases that we say a lot. Like at the beginning, John would always talk about the crock pot method, slow cooker versus, microwave. And then there was, I don't remember, someone was on our podcast and they said sticky buns, and it kind of stuck.
I said it.
I see what you did there. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah.
We were talking about, being sticky, and I said like a sticky bun, and then that's my last name. So then people thought that was fun. So
yeah. And I can't remember how I said something. I think the phrase was drop a deep nugget.
Yeah. Wow. So Matthew is coming up. That's a good line from him.
And, and like I said, like there's a couple times when I've said a couple of things and John just like loses it. Like I know where in my head where I'm going, but it like doesn't come out that way. And that was one of those things, and it just kind of stuck.
We've done 75 or so episodes at this point, and amongst the 75 hours of content, every now and then there are moments that define you that you didn't mean. And so Nick was talking, someone said something really important. He goes, wow, you just dropped a deep nugget right there. And I just had to, I had to stop, I had to laugh. And that's the fun part about doing this podcast and being with people and meeting so many people, is you just get these moments that like we look back in the last year of doing it, and it's just like, there are things, crock pots and sticky buns and deep nuggets, and there's so many things that make no sense to, if you haven't listened to our podcast. But I think that's what sets us apart, is like we love just building community and love just hanging out and talking with other people and like making it a comfortable environment for people to learn. And honestly, when we started the podcast, we wanted it to kind of be like, we know you're editing, and we just wanted to be over there in your ear if you're editing and wanted to listen and like feel like you're hanging out, and just create a place because most of us work by ourselves. We're in a dungeon, we're editing by ourselves, and it's like, how can we build community? And that was huge for us, is like building community. So
that's a great segue into my next question, is describe, I mean, you sort of have, but if you were to describe the community that you've created, how would you do that?
I think that encouraging, supporting, we were pretty adamant at the beginning. Actually, John was super adamant. It was like, we don't need a group. Like there's already, when it comes to the wedding video groups, there's 5 or 6 that are, fairly big in size and stuff. And like, we don't just want to add to the noise. And I can't remember, one day there was a reason that I was like, this is why we need a group. And so we did it. Thankfully, John had like started one like 4 years ago that had 150, 200 people in it. And so we just kind of repurposed that and changed it. But, we wanted to be a positive voice. We want to be encouragement. Our admin, and there's also there's a face on our group. John and I are the leaders of it. So I think that adds something where some other groups don't. Right. But we want to be encouraging, and we want people that are new, that have these very basic questions, feel comfortable asking them, because I know that a little self-conscious, they might be scared that someone's going to rip them apart or something, and we don't want that. We want people to feel encouraged and open to asking questions. And so that's really kind of the big push behind our group, is giving people a voice to ask those questions.
And if I would add anything to that, because I think Nick did a great job, would be just, I wanted a place for, you think of people in the wedding filmmaking industry, like White and Reverie or Ray Roman or Matt Johnson, or some of these names that are just like big time in our, the celebrities of our industry. I wanted a place for the newbies to be able to connect with people that have been doing it for a while, and almost like wrap our arms around the idea that if we can all work with each other to make each other better and have hard conversations, we can elevate the industry as a whole. And that was the ultimate mission and goal, was we want to elevate the wedding videography, wedding filmmaking industry. And so to do that, we were very, very strategic about the kinds of things that we posted as daily threads, or the kinds of comments that we immediately deleted. And so there's been hundreds of hours of time of deliberation amongst our admins of should we allow this kind of post or shouldn't we? And what it all comes back to is, it's not a group for people to self-promote and try to build their own stuff, but it's a group for people to help each other get better and to wrap their arms around the community. And it's we started it in March, I think so, or February. And, we're already right at 5,000 members in the group as we're recording this. And so every day, every week, there's hundreds of new people joining. And it's, we thought when we started the podcast that maybe somebody would listen to this. You don't know, and if you're out there wanting to put out content, if you think about this is going to be out on the internet forever. And this is, what if people hate this or destroy us, or what if and so putting out this content, we didn't know if anybody would even listen, first of all, and then they've wrapped their arms back around what we're doing. And it's just been this synergy of it's been unbelievable, to be honest. I know that people say that, but the educators that have come alongside and been on our show and are interacting in our group and stuff, that community is so solid. And we get tagged so many times of just, yes, this is the place where you should go. The other wedding video groups, everybody just kind of crucifies each other. And, this is a happy place where people can, if you are rude or mean to somebody, they're going to razz you for that. But, for the majority, we don't have to deal with that kind of stuff just because we've set that precedent in the group.
Yeah, I love that. It's I saw a post yesterday. Somebody new, actually an old friend of mine from the industry. She'd come over and she's like, "Hey, I'm tired of the other groups because it's too much drama, and this seems like a good place." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." But I love that, the quality of the community, it might not be as big as some of the others, but that doesn't even matter, because it's really about hey, we're not here to complain. We're here to help each other. And that's the heart and soul of what you guys have created. So the quality of the people it kind of compounds, and it's awesome, man. I mean, I was telling you guys before the show, I'm so happy for you guys and proud of the work that you're doing. It's probably one of the things that just makes me a little bit sad why, we don't do. Back in the day, we were doing 30 to 40 weddings a year. And so when I see the conversations, I'm like, man, if we were knee deep in weddings, I would just love to spend all of my time in this group. But for me, it's just it's more entertainment than anything else. Only just because we're not doing a ton of them anymore. But
yeah,
right.
I will be right back with my interview with the How to Film Weddings guys, Nick Miller and John Sticky Buns, right after this. I've been running my own video production company called Tell Studios, and have for the last 15 years. I'm ancient in this world. I went from charging clients a couple $100, actually probably less than that, for of video to being able to consistently book 5- and 6-figure video jobs and working all alone in the bedroom of our first house to having multiple employees in almost a 6,000 square foot studio space. And I'm here to tell you that you can also win in this business. Maybe your goal isn't to hire employees or to have your own studio, but maybe you want to not have to work so hard at getting people to hire you, or figure out on your own how you can charge more money, or how you can work on projects that inspire you. You can do this, but you need a plan. You need a process. You need some steps on how to do this, repeatable steps, and you need a community where there's some accountability. And that's what Studio Sherpas is all about. We are a community of guides helping our clients understand how we can help them, and figuring out sooner rather than later if we're going to be a good fit to work together. All while charging more than we ever thought that we could, because we finally started believing in our value, and we finally started charging what we're worth. If you're interested in becoming a part of this community, you can find out more about the Video Business Academy at studiosherpas.com/academy. And if you're serious about growing in a real and honest and actionable way, without being sleazy, but being totally authentic to who you are as a person, or using trickery or sorcery or anything like that, you really should consider the Video Business Academy. Again, the URL is studiosherpas.com/academy. And now back to our show.
What would you say? What's the most common frustration that you hear commonly among, maybe it's new members in the group, or just in conversations with people as they're starting or growing their wedding film business?
Yeah, I see it a lot. People just not knowing how to get leads, or how to get good booking, or like good quality leads, or good, like they're like, I don't know how to, I'm excited to do this, but how do I get the ball rolling? I mean, that's the main question for me, is like, I'm just starting. What would you recommend? What would you, that's kind of for me. Nick, do you see anything different than that?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I think a thing in a lot of the people that are posting that they're sharing, they're like, they see that, John's in 2020 is starting at like 7,500, I'm, my base is around 4,500, these like bigger numbers and stuff. And I think that a lot of people are saying, oh, I can't charge that, or I can't do that. And I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of self-confidence, like problems with those questions, because they might want to charge that, but they don't believe that they can, or they question how, or whatever. So I think that one of the things is us encouraging is trying to tell people, no, you are worth it. We've actually received 2 messages this week where people were like, at the beginning of the year, I was charging around $1,500 and I just booked a $4,500 wedding, in the span of a year for someone that's been doing it for less than 2 years. Yeah. And so like, I think that confidence is just a big thing that people really struggle with. And that's not just in our industry. I know that's like across the board. And I'm sure, Ryan, you hear people, talking, about the same idea. Just like, oh, I can't, say I'll do this corporate job for 20,000 or whatever, I'm not worth that, but it's just that confidence thing.
When did you start believing yourself, like that you were worth it? Because I know I feel like we've all been there, and maybe we do start out really strong and super confident, and then we realize pretty quick, like, oh man, somebody else is charging. I've got the same kind of video, and they're charging like 5 times. Like, I'll never be able to. But then at some point, it's like, oh, actually, no, I totally can do that. So what was it for you guys that made you start believing that you could charge more, or that you did have more confidence?
For me, like, I've been in business since 2007, and I think that, yeah, I know. I started when I was 21. Back off. But like, to me, I started out around $750. I think that was my first wedding. Woo! And slowly, I know, it was so much to me. I was like, that was like half a month's salary. I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh. Yep. And so, like, I don't know, just like over time, and we talk about this a lot in our podcast and just in our group about how, like, I think in an Instagram famous world and in everyone's an influencer world, everyone wants it now. And like, there's just no substitute for taking it slow and steady and using the crockpot method. You want something that's slow and steady. And so for me, I don't remember like a moment, but I just would slowly raise my prices and slowly get better. And after 5 or 6 years, I was like, wow, I'm charging 4,000. And it's like, oh my God, I took classes and did different things. And so to me, it was like up until I think 3 years ago, maybe, like I was just kind of vanilla in what I was doing, and really started to focus on like, oh, people would actually want like John Bunn to be at their wedding, not just Redeemed Productions. And so I started putting my face on it and starting realizing, oh my goodness, I am, like, I don't think anybody ever gets to where they know it all. But like I realized with all the DMs that I was getting, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm a lot further than a lot of people. And I think it was probably 3 years ago that mindset really shifted for me of like, I could be a thought leader in this and I am worth it. And I think the hardest part for me was going from somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 of what I was charging for a wedding film, because I wouldn't be able to afford me anymore.
Right.
And so I was like, well, nobody else would be able to afford me. And I just had a random like $7,000 package that was just like, if anyone ever books it. And I just remember the first person calling me and like, yeah, I'll take that $7,000 package, and like no questions asked. And I was like, oh no, I could have been charging this. And so like I tasted it and I felt that confidence. And like, if you're in your second wedding or third wedding or second year in commercial work or what, like you over time build confidence, the more that you're around and the more you're around other people. And so for me, I started really getting confident in myself 3 years ago. And when I did that, that's when my prices skyrocketed.
So in like September of 17, I filmed a wedding that I think has ruined wedding videos for a lot of people. Like it's one of those ones where the couple is gorgeous. The groom, I think I counted, he cried 6 or 7 times on the wedding day, like just in a beautiful location and stuff. And so we still get inquiries from this video, a couple years ago, just how it was. And in the wedding videography group, I actually like won like video of the year or something with that one. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then after that, that's when I kind of got to John, and I was like shocked at his prices, because we shot, was that in January of 18 or so, John, that we shot that?
Yep.
And, and he was like, Nick, I'm charging like 7,000, but if I could shoot like you do, like I'd be charging 10, 11 or 12,000. And I was like, wait, what? Because at that time I was like around 3. And so him, hearing, those conversations and just him encouraging me and him talking to me. And I was like, okay, I can just do more. And one of the things that we started implementing in 2018 was the same day edit at every single wedding. Didn't tell our couples about it. We're just doing a little, 1-minute loop. And so we would just start surprising our couples and blowing them away and be very service oriented. And I was like, okay, we are offering something that is well above and beyond what other people are doing. And so we just leaned into that. And from there, it's really kind of snowballed in price and just being able to raise. And our confidence has grown because we know we put out a good product. We serve really well. We help our clients, and we're going to give them something that they'll, cherish forever. So I think it's just kind of a time thing. If you're not just like a born confident person, because there are people out there that are like that, it just takes time, to build your product for a while. And then you're like, no, I really can do this. And after that first person, books something that's really ridiculous in price in your mind, you're just like, oh, okay, I guess I can charge that. That's a big help too.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think the longer you do it, the more comfortable, the more confidence you build. I think that's I don't want to say that's obvious, but that makes sense. One suggestion that I have for people that are in this spot of like, they don't believe in themselves, or they think like I would never be able to, book something, the highest thing I've ever booked is $3,000. My suggestion would be like, well, like in the packages, you know, make sure that you have some packages and then have a $6,000 or $7,000 option, and then just wait for that person to book it. And then you're going to be surprised. And then when one person books it, then you have to think like, well, maybe this was a fluke. And then when the second person does, then you know it's not a fluke. So then, you know, slowly, like, you know, your lowest package, like get rid of that one, and then, you know, and then offer a $10,000 package. And that's kind of like how it, you know, it snowballed for us. We were increasing our prices by $300 at a time until we kind of got to a spot where it's like, okay, we're not getting a ton more bookings. But then when somebody booked a $10,000 wedding, we were like, oh my God, I never would have thought or dreamed that. And then a 12, and then a 15, and then a 20, and then a 24, you know, and it's like, how much will people actually spend on these things, right?
I had a point I wanted to add in there, and I think that a lot of us forget, and we talked about this in one of our free workshops we just did, but if you're not confident, even if you're like really deep down, not 1,000,000% confident, but like at least you're confident when you're communicating in your sales pitch, like if you're not confident in it, in the price, nobody else will be. And if you're not a little uncomfortable with the price, I would encourage you to just push it a little further and be a little uncomfortable with it, because you just never know until you've been confident in a meeting and somebody says yes, and that rush that you get from somebody, you know, valuing what you do. But like if I go into a meeting and a bride, you know, I tell the bride's not going to ever be like, oh, your packages say 5,000. Can we go ahead and like pay 7,500? Like they're not going to ask you, can we pay more? And so like you need to have something that is uncomfortable for you, whether that's in a commercial or a wedding or whatever product, like, you know, shoot that you're doing. Like this is the uncomfortable, like if you want to book it, it's worth it, but it's way out here kind of option. And like just it's over the top, and like just throw that bait out there, because who knows, you might catch like the whale instead of a big fish.
I think that's brilliant. And really that idea of having confidence in a sales meeting, that stems from, you know, most of us are creatives, right?
Right.
I mean, probably, hopefully all of us are at some level. And we I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think this is true for a lot of people, where if they were to deliver a sales pitch or you know, say the same thing to every single, you know, say you had 10 meetings in one day and you needed to talk about your wedding services or your, you know, corporate video services, and you said the same thing, at least a portion of the meeting, like maybe you started at the same or in the middle, you know, you kind of go through these 3 steps. There's a part of us that would feel like that is so uncreative, that is so like canned, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel natural. It's not flowy. I'm an artist. I'm a creative. But here's the thing. As soon as I created a process for how I do my sales meetings, and as soon as I was able to do that enough times where I could memorize, like, okay, like, you know, at the beginning, these are the questions that I ask. These are the 2 questions that I always ask. In the middle, this is how I talk about our process. And at the end, these are the questions that I ask before they head out the door. Once I did that, and I did it a number of times, or I've done it on the phone, it's like the confidence that I have is 100 out of 100. There's nothing, people can say stuff to me that like, I'd be like, wow, I've never answered that, or nobody's ever asked that. But I can always fall back to this process, and people can feel, I think you were saying this, John, people can feel if you are confident or not. And so your product might be only a 30 out of the scale of, you know, 100. But if you come out at 70 or 80 and just say, like, this is how I make a 30 out of 100 quality video, this is what we do every single time, people will say, man, like maybe I don't love the quality as much, but I really feel comfortable with the way that you do this. And it's okay in a sales meeting. Sorry, I'm kind of getting off. I
like it. I'm taking notes.
It's okay in a sales meeting to not have to use your creativity, right? Save your creativity for your filming, for your editing, for your storytelling. Save your creativity for that, and use opportunities like a sales meeting, a sales call to say like, okay, this is the process. Because you do have processes for how you create great films, right? And if you want to say like, no, every time I approach everything new and different, okay, yeah, sure. But there's still a process in that. Even if you haven't written it out, you do things a certain way every single time.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be for sales. Okay, I'll stop. Done.
Yeah, Yeah, that's great. And John and I, we both have, our scripted kind of sales meeting kind of thing. It's not like, written word for word or anything like that, but we do that. We cover kind of the same topics, and this is, step one, this is step two. Well, another thing we preach when it comes to, our sales calls and our meetings is, excuse me, is to listen to what the people are saying to you. Don't just try to get to the next point.
Right.
Because whenever you listen to them, you can hear what their pain points are, so that okay, their grandparents are really, old, and they're not sure how much longer they're going to be here, and, like that kind of thing. So you need to know, not in like a skeezy way, trying to play on their emotions, but like, hey, this is something that we offer, and kind of touch on, some of those pain points. Because I think that that's what the best salespeople out there are, right? Yeah. Are ones that are listening to the people that they are talking to answer their questions or to help them along the way.
I would add in there too, like one of our big core values is serve, not sell. And so, if your heart, when you go into some of these, like for confidence sake, I go into a meeting and I'm lucky, I've worked really hard to get to a spot in my business where, like, if I don't book the bride or the project, it does not affect me. Like, I have enough money coming in, and you need to come across that way, even if you don't have enough money coming in. It needs to be more about, like, if I had $1 million in the bank, how would I sell them my service? What is the best thing for them? What are some options to kind of throw out there to them of, like, if you want to do this 3-day excursion in Italy before we shoot your wedding, it's going to be $10,000 more, but you can throw out these creative things to serve them. And when you're serving them, whether or not you book them or not, it always comes back to making you more money with the right clients if you're focused on serving them first. Because if they don't see your heart and they don't love what you're selling them, I go into a meeting and I think, how can I see if I can serve this couple the best, or how can I serve this client the best? And if I focus on that, everything else falls into place. And so that has been my secret sauce, over the last 10 plus years, is like, I don't care. Like, I tell them at the beginning of the meeting, I'm not trying to just sell you something. I would love to take your money, and that'd be great, but I would love it not at all if you don't like what I'm offering. So I just want to throw it out there first. I'm not going to try to sell you something that I don't think you actually need with my expertise. And so moving towards that side of things and being the expert to them and just telling them how you can serve them the best has revolutionized everything that I do in my entire business. And now the brides and the couples that book me, or the clients that book me, they are exactly the type of people. I've repelled the people I don't want to work with, and I've attracted the exact right people. And my life now is so much fun because of that.
I love that, man. It's so good. This idea that if you're not, you need a script, you need some kind of like home base, some sort of process that you can, just have memorized and know that I need to be able to ask these questions. I need to walk away from this meeting having asked these things, or them, having answered whatever questions that they might have. But if you're not like what you're saying, Nick, if you're not pressing in and asking them, like, what do you see? What do you see in our films, or what is your dream? Like, what's most important? If you're not asking those questions, then and you're just telling them, hey, these are the 3 bullets that I have in my process. This is what I tell people, why people hire me. Like, that's not helpful to them. If they're saying, no, like this over here, like this is really important. You can still, frame what you do. Maybe you can still serve them in that way and say, like, oh my gosh, like that, we would love to be able to do that. But in asking questions, as the salesperson, you can figure out, like, maybe they're not a great fit because of the things that they're saying. So it's not just about getting your pitch across and, doing your process. Part of your process really should be like, ask the client, like, what is most important to you? Like, what are you looking for in a filmmaker? Like, what's a successful wedding film? Like, those types of things. And then really listening to those things, not just asking them because they're on your list of questions to ask.
Yeah, and we say it a lot, but like just treating people like people instead of like dollar signs. Like the dollar signs will follow the service, and that's what it comes down to. It's just like so many people get so focused on the task or the detail instead of being like a cool hang, a cool person to be around, a comfortable person to talk to, and you make them feel comfortable. And that works across all sales platforms, whether you're buying a refrigerator at the refrigerator store, or if you're selling, you know, $100,000 client on a video project or whatever. And so like people want to be around people that make them feel comfortable. And it's the most uncomfortable thing to feel like you're being sold to.
Yeah.
What is it, John? You know, people don't care how much you know until you show them how much you care. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you want these people to book you, I mean, take a vested interest in them. Don't serve them well. That's
because
what
you're a nice person, not
right.
just because you're trying to sell them stuff. Yeah.
Right. Serve them well. Like that's our big thing is serve. I remember I had a phone call about a month ago with a bride who's I'm shooting this weekend, and she was like, I want to upgrade to your top package. It was like a $2,000 add-on. And I'm sitting there talking to her about her wedding day. And I'm like, and she was like, where do I send the money? And I was talking to her and I was like, you don't need this. Like, you and if you can get to a point where you're like, you know, honest. I was like, I'll do it if you really want it, but in my opinion, I don't think that you need to spend this money because what you're gonna have, you know, all that. And I think she's gonna love us even more for me telling her you don't need this service than it, you know, I got it and she gets a longer video or, you know, and any of that kind of stuff. So if you can get to that place where you're really serving them well and you're like, have your clients' interests rather than just your own, I think you're going to be in a great place for your business.
I hope you let her know that you do take tips, though.
Yeah.
Upwards of $2,000.
Yeah.
I don't want to be awkward, but I do take tips.
I'll send you that email here when we're done.
Okay, so here's another Instagram comment. This one is from Capture Color Weddings. And this person says, would love to talk about why they made the choice to be so open about their own business and how much they charge and how they've gone on to ask guests to be open about this as well. And then they ended it with, we learned so much from them. Exclamation point.
There's the answer. No, I mean, I think when we first got going, Nick and I were like, you know, I said it to Nick at the beginning with the podcast. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be David Letterman. Like I thought he had the coolest job ever. Like to get to meet celebrities and like talk to them like people, and he would do funny games with them. And now, you know, modern day Jimmy Fallon, if you're not old like me, but like just making these people that seem just unreachable reachable in comfortable conversation. And I knew that like if that was the vibe of our show, was more fun and just laid back, that like that's, you know, more is caught than taught. I think so. And I say that to like our kids and, you know, things like that. And it's like just by having a conversation like you would if we were out grabbing a drink or having a pizza or whatever, that was the vibe. And so we knew that, you know, counting the costs leading up to the podcast was like, we're going to have to be very open about all of the things that we're struggling with.
Yeah.
You know, there's been times where we've both been low on funds while recording the podcast.
Like
one time
this was in, I don't know, it was in April, March, February, some back then. And I was talking to John and I was like, I'm going to be out of money in a month. I mean, like legitimately, I'm going to be out of money in a month. And so we recorded a podcast about that. And I think that a lot of that really resonated with a lot of people because, you know, here's John and I that have, you know, at the time, 25 podcasts. We're quote unquote successful in this industry, whatever that means. And I'm like, I'm going to be out of money in a month.
Yeah.
You know, and just showing that, you know, we're real. And I think that helps people a lot more because you look at some of these big names and you're like, oh, they don't have any problems. They don't have any, you know, anything that can get in their way. And that's just not true. And I've always been, you know, a believer in giving, you know, where I can give. And this is something that I can give. And I would, you know, for us to see the whole industry succeed because we're willing to share this information, I think that's a win in our book.
Yeah. And
John,
for me, like looking at instincts, looking at like Instagram and looking at, you know, all these platforms where everything is perfect and like you're showing the best of the best. And like, I just wanted people to be able to pull the curtain back and say like, even successful people are struggling in certain areas. We're not all there. We haven't all arrived. And so, you know, back to the question from Capture Color Weddings, you know, it was a decision we made to be vulnerable because we knew that like people are tired of the fluffy crap that's out there.
Yeah.
And the more that we could be honest about where we are, if that inspires people, that's where, we've seen the success in the show, because we do ask every guest kind of, what are you charging? How much, how many weddings are you shooting? And, we don't like specifically say, what is your taxable income or anything like that. But like,
A lot of
people are able to say, okay, this person charges $4,000. They're in their second year, or this person's charging $25,000. Like, it helps give a little bit more context to, some of these names that you might not know or things like that. But like, I think for me, it was just relatability. Like, I just wanted to be able to relate to people and say, hey, I didn't charge over $5,000 for a wedding film until like my 8th year of doing this. So it puts it into perspective for people. And I am a big, like, it's huge for me to think long-term and not think about like just how I can get a big sale today only. Like, I'm thinking, how long-term can we help, change this industry? And so that, like, I knew that that's what we had to do. Nick knew that's what we had to do to be able to really pull the curtain back on the industry for people that were successful, and most of us think, oh, they have a big number behind their name on Instagram, that means they're successful. And what I've seen a lot is quite the opposite. So it was just fun for me to like just kind of dig and, and we just kind of happenstance asked somebody the first couple of times, like, well, what do you charge? And now it's kind of like one of the first questions we're always asking. And like, it really helps set the stage to warm them up to the episode and to warm the guests or the people up to the guests.
Yeah, I know. So before I got into wedding video, my wife was a wedding photographer, and she started in 2010. And in 2010, she was like, I need education. I need to learn. I want to do this. And she messaged so many of the local people in town and got no responses, or I'm not going to help you, or, anything, I don't know if anyone actually said, I'm not going to help you, but, like no responses, people wouldn't get back to her. And so we really want to create a space, we believe in serving our couples well, but, our podcast listeners are kind of our clients as well, if you want to think of it that way. And we want to serve them, very, very well across the board. And so we want to have, if people have questions, again, we want them to feel safe and we want to answer them. So my wife's experience also kind of played into, how we present ourselves and how we do things as well.
That's really good. It reminds me of a story. I have a friend that's in the business, and I follow this person on Instagram, and I'm like, man, the company, they're always doing like really cool stuff, like these huge jobs, like awesome, like they've got this new building, like just all this really cool stuff. And then I ran into this person at a conference, and we were chatting, and this person is like, you're the one thing that I don't have is a family, and I look at your Instagram and I see you and your family, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like we're playing the same game. It's different. Like in my mind, it's like this business jealousy. And in this person's mind, it's like this family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why did I not see that I was doing this? And we have no idea. So I love the heart behind, sharing, where you're at. It's like, financially things are terrible right now. Or, we did 50 weddings last year and we've made the most money. It's, the comparison thing is like, it can be so bad, but when it comes from a good place of like, here's just where we're at, and here's kind of how we got here. Here's how we've messed up. Like, I mean, that's why I do the show, because I get to share my stuff of like, hey, like we've had a 7-figure year and we've done some really big jobs, but we've also had like, there are 3 years in particular, and one that's like not even too far behind us that were like the worst ever, where I'm like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Right. Mm-hmm. So, but when people hear that, they're encouraged, they're inspired. They're like, man, I'm glad I'm not that guy. I'm doing better than he is. That's not what it's about either. But it is just getting some context for like, who the heck is out there? What are they doing? Should I be charging more? How can I do this better? And, I think, sorry, I'm a little fired up again, but I think there's 2 ways to approach what we do as humans. It's like, one where it's just like, I'm going to build my kingdom. I'm going to do this thing. I've got to, pull my bootstraps up and just kind of dig in, grind, do the grind and hustle and all these things. and hope that I'm successful and hope that it pays off. But the whole time, like my body's tense and my relationships are tense and work is tense. And it's like, I go on vacation and it's like, I've got to be I'm on my email and everything is tense. And then the other is like, man, I'm just going to I'm going to open my hands and just, I'm going to approach this differently. And just like, what would happen? Like maybe some people will squash me, but is that what's the cost? Do I want to live this life of like tense and like, oh, I can't share anything. People can't know, this is private. Like there's no way, because everybody wants to crush me, or this other where it's just like, hey, here's where I'm at. And if you have something that you could offer that could be helpful, that'd be amazing. If I have something that I can offer that can be helpful, I would love to do that. I found that way is way more fulfilling, is way more life-giving. Like I think that's where probably most of us were meant to live. But unfortunately, whether it was growing up, circumstances that we saw, like our parents or whatever, that maybe made us think otherwise. And so anyway, I so appreciate the heart behind what you guys do and what you guys are all about. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah,
So
it's been interesting.
Sorry, Jack.
I'm sorry. I had one point. It's been interesting for me to see us giving this content, and there's so much free stuff that we've given, and I am now charging more than I've ever charged for wedding films, because I am able to help even people in my market charge more, and my films might be different or better, or I'm further ahead than them. So they're charging $4,000 or $5,000. Well, I've been doing it a way longer. I have a way better contact list. I have a way, whatever, and I'm able to charge more myself. And so that wasn't the point of it, but that is the reciprocity that happens from, putting good stuff out into the universe. And I am just such a firm believer that there are so many weddings and so many jobs that there is plenty for all of us. We are in an industry where we shoot video in a world that is becoming more and more video centric. You have to have video for every company and for every event, and we're all taking selfies, and but video, everyone talks about how important video marketing is right now. And so for me, it's I could lose out on a job because I showed somebody something I did, but in the long term, fulfillment, number one, like you're saying, I'm so much more fulfilled right now, just helping so many people and getting messages every day. But being able to, it then turns into being able to raise my own prices because I'm helping them raise their prices.
Yeah, that's really good. So you guys have, I think we could go for another hour or two. We don't have that time today. But I know before we go, I know you guys have some cool stuff coming up, and I would love for you to kind of let us know what's cooking.
Nick, tell them what's cooking.
So one of the things that we're actually doing, kind of a part of the How to Film Wedding stuff, is we're offering these free online workshops. One, it was called I Suck at Sales, which, John and I just kind of go through our whole sales guide process. And then another one we did was, why aren't big budget weddings booking me? It's kind of a mouthful to say, but, just go how, I remember I booked a wedding in 2018 for $2,900, and literally a few weeks ago, I booked one for $8,500. So how have I gone from about $3,000 to almost $9,000 in a year and a half, basically? So, how we've, both of us have elevated our brands. John, he might have been at, a year and a half ago, 55, but now he's, starting at 75, he's just continuing. He's booked a $10,000 package. So talking about those things. So those are actually in a Facebook group. You can watch the replays of those. But on January 7th, we are going to do another workshop, to be determined on the topic, but I guarantee you that you're going to want to listen to it. So just howtofilmweddings.com/free workshops.
Awesome. And if people want to follow you guys on social, how do they do that?
We made it hard. No, everywhere is just at How to Film Weddings. So on Instagram, we're pretty, active. Even if you're not necessarily a wedding filmmaker, our Facebook group, facebook.howtofilmweddings.com, that's a great place just to interact and get to know other people. But yeah, howtofilmweddings.com has links to everything, but wherever you want to follow us, it's just at How to Film Weddings.
Awesome. Well, what parting words do you have for our fellow Sherpanigans?
Nick, do you want to go first? I have a couple of Sherpanigan comments.
Oh man. Okay. I hope I'm going to say what you're going to say. So then you have to think of something new.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a couple things that we've already touched on. One is going to be, serve your clients. Don't try to sell them. Treat them like people, treat them how you wanted to be treated, serve them really well. And then another thing that, we believe in our How to Film Weddings business, but also like me personally, my wife and I in our Wild Oak Films business, our wedding business is, to share information where you can, be free with that. Remember the old Vacation Bible School song, love is like a lucky penny, that one, hold it tight and you don't have any. No, this just must be a Church of Christ thing that I grew up with, but give it away and you'll have plenty. Like that's how the words go. But I was like, that's stupid. Like when I'm a kid, I'm like, if you have money and you hold it in your hand, if you give it away, you don't have money.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. It is, with love and with giving and with service and all that kind of stuff. If you're just giving it away, then you're going to get more back. And we don't do it to get stuff back necessarily, but these ideas will present themselves. So serve your clients well, serve the people well, share your information, and then you'll you will succeed. That definition might be different on people, but I believe that you will succeed in your business and your life.
Nick took my answer about the Church of Christ song. I don't know how you knew it. No, that's the only thing I would
sing.
That's exactly. No, the only thing I would add is I remember. No, I don't want you to sing it. I remember like 4 or 5 years ago finding the Studio Sherpas podcast, and I've always been such a big fan. And it's like I never would have thought like that we would be on. Like it's so humbling to be here. But thankfully, we have arrived. But if you're out there and you do feel like like you're kind of an animal in a cage that needs to get out and teach. And I would encourage you to just start. I think a lot of us think that you have to have everything ready before you get going. And we did not have everything ready with our podcast. If you listen to episode 1 versus episode 75, we've come a long way. And there's baby steps and just day after day of putting in that work. But if you don't know what it even looks like or what you should be doing, I would just recommend writing down your ideas of things you want to say or want to do, and then just starting to create, even if you never put it out, just get going. Because most of the time people are just the whole paralysis by analysis thing. So, you're analyzing so many things that you don't do anything. So get going, make content. There's room for you in this type of market, educating clients, educating, whatever it is. I would encourage you take those steps.
Yeah. We all have our own unique voice, and people might think like, I'd never start a podcast about wedding films because there's already this one. I would never start one about corporate films and whatever else Ryan talks about because there's already this one. Or I would never, try to start a wedding film company because there's already another one in my town. Like, the thing is, people are drawn to different people. So regardless of the quality, regardless of the price, if you don't put yourself out there and people can't, like, they're going to be drawn to the way that you are and the way that you put yourself out there and all that stuff. So yes to what you said, John. You too, Nick. That was really good stuff. But this one hit a chord because I was even thinking, I'm like, yeah, if you're listening and you're like, man, I would love to have a show like one of these guys. Do it. Like, here's the thing. Like, I have tried to connect with like everybody in this space, like everybody who has a show. Like, I'm not afraid to like reach out and say, hey, here's a show that I'm doing. I mean, I reach out to some big names, and most of them don't get back to me. But the ones that I do, I'm like, oh my gosh, they got back to me. So I did the same thing that I did with my video business, where when I started, I just started reaching out to everybody to find out, hey, like, what's working in this business? And yeah, I'm competition, but like, can we be friends and can we send referrals? That's such a better, it goes back to my, this versus like
the warm feelies. Yeah.
The warm feelies. So anyway, good stuff. I'm excited to check out these trainings that you guys have coming up. And do I have anything else? I don't think I got anything else. I'm so glad that you guys could do this, and super appreciate your work and all of that stuff. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
That's it. Just thank you. Just kidding.
Thank you so much.
And cut. Thank you so much.
All right, I'm telling you, I told you, it's so good. That episode was so good. I love those guys. You can get all the show notes, all the links and things that we talked about if you go to studiosherpas.com/156. And don't forget, Nick and John are hosting How to Sell Your Story and Charge More for Your Wedding Films. To get access to that, it's for a limited time. It's not going to be available for always. So go to howtofilmweddings.com/Studio Sherpas. I want you to support these guys. They are amazing and have built an awesome, awesome tribe. I appreciate you so much. I hope you're finding this Christmas and holiday season to be a time filled with hope and wonder, some peace, some joy, some love. I'm going to be back next week with a special end-of-year episode, and I can't wait to have you join me. You're probably wondering why I'm wearing headphones. I have no idea. Actually, I do know why, because I filmed something else right before this, and I needed to hear myself. This time, I don't actually need to hear myself, but headphones anyway. If you like this episode, please share it and let me know what your big takeaway is. What are you going to do different because of something that you heard today? You know that the only way that we grow and become better is by actually doing something about it. So, my friend, let's do this, okay? Till next time, take care. I love you. I love your guts. I'll talk to you soon. See ya.